Hey everybody, this is Jerry Nines. Recently I was offered a customized Browning high power pattern pistol to review. And one of the things about that pistol is a really specific operating system that you don't see a lot. And so I thought I would share what the SFS system is and my thoughts about it. So first of all, we have two handguns here. We have my own Springfield SA35. You've probably seen the series of videos I've done on that. And then we have from the folks at BH Spring Solution, their advanced Gerson MCP 35 pistol. These are both 9mm. They are both based on the Browning high power, and you might refer to those as pattern pistols or clones. Before we do anything else, gun number one, Springfield SA35, no magazine, visually and physically inspect, and that is a clear gun. Gerson MCP 35, no magazine, visually and physically inspect, and that gun is clear. Now that that's out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about the SFS system. And before I talk about the SFS system, let me tell you just a little bit about how we got here from a design perspective, kind of why the SFS system is, and then we'll get into what it actually is. 1935, John Browning starts designing what will become the Browning high power pistol. He passes away, and that work is finished by Dieudonné Save, I believe is the gentleman's name. The French adopt the pistol. Browning makes it and sells a bunch of them over the years. It does go through a couple of different design iterations. The big ones being sort of the Mark II and the Mark III modifications. And the Mark III modifications, if I remember correctly, happened sometime in the mid-1980s. The gentleman who was the chief designer at the time and really is credited with doing any sort of real design work on the Browning high power after Mr. Browning and Mr. Save is a man named Léon Hubert. Now, Léon, as I said, worked for Browning/FN in Belgium, and one of the things that he developed was the SFS system. The SFS system was available from Browning on high powers. It was a line extension, which means that like you could get a Browning high power with the traditional system, and then the model number changed and you could get the exact same gun with the SFS system. Sometime in the early 90s, I think 1993, Mr. Hubert left Browning and took his inventions and his designs and patents, I don't know about all of them, but certainly some of them with him, and founded a company called RDIH in Belgium. What does RDIH stand for? I have no idea. But I'm led to believe that for a long time, this was the place where people in the know went to upgrade their Browning high powers. Not just people from the US, but people from all over the world knew that RDIH was where you got Browning high power stuff that worked and worked well. One of the products that they sold was this SFS system because it was designed to be available on Browning high powers from the factory. It was also magnificently designed to be able to be retrofit into Browning high powers that didn't have it from the factories. And those kits have been available here in the United States through different gunsmiths that worked on Browning high powers. So let's talk a little bit about what the SFS system is. And I think it stands for, I can never remember for some reason, I think it stands for Safe Fast Shooting System, Safe Fast Shooting, SFS maybe. Again, what is it? Well, if we go first to our Springfield Armory SA35, which is a traditional single action handgun. Now, if you're not really familiar with what single action means, that's fine. I have a video series, I'll link to it somewhere, a little pop-up for my online Firearms Academy. You can go there and you can check that out. But essentially, in a single action firearm, in order for the gun to be loaded and ready to go, the hammer is going to be back, a round is going to be in the chamber, and the safety is going to be in the on position. That deactivates the trigger and also locks up our slide. In order to fire, I would take usually my firing thumb, sweep off that safety, and then depress the trigger, and I get a shot. And then, of course, the weapon reciprocates, it goes through its normal mode of operation, and I can continue to shoot until I decide I don't want to shoot anymore, at which point I go ahead and I put the safety back on, there again rendering the firearm unable to fire until I decide to take the safety off again. The SFS system is in some ways very much the same, in other ways very different. It is still a single action pistol, and by that I mean that the hammer, when cocked, can be released by the trigger, and when the hammer is at rest, meaning it's already fired, then pulling the trigger isn't going to get me anything. But again, when we take the Browning high power pistol and it is equipped with the SFS system, in this case, in order to get the gun on safe, you'll notice that if I try to push up on that safety, it's not going to go anywhere. It just doesn't happen. In order to get this gun on safe, I take my hand and I push forward on the hammer. And you may have noticed that the safety now sprung to the up position, the on safe position. That still deactivates the trigger and it still locks up the slide. So it is as safe as my sort of more traditional pattern high power pistol where I have the safety on. And again, all those things are true. Trigger deactivated, gun is tied up, it's not going bang. Okay, so as I said, if I have my SFS pistol loaded and the hammer is back, to put it on safe, I take that hammer and I manually push it forward. The safety goes on. Now, in order to get the gun ready to fire, I still take the safety off, and I'm going to do this with my off-camera thumb, the one closest to me, so you can see what's going on. But now that safety is going to rotate down, and now that hammer springs back, and now it's ready to fire, and then I can squeeze the trigger, fire the gun. It's going to go through its normal cycle of operation, or I can continue to squeeze the trigger, and I'm going to continue to get shots until I decide to stop or until I run out of ammo, at which point to put the gun back on safe, I can't put the safety up. Instead, I push the hammer forward, okay? So this is the SFS system. This is what allows me to have a firearm that would be carried with the hammer back and the safety on, and instead allows me to carry it where the hammer essentially is forward and sort of appears to be forward. And the reason I say that is because, again, if I take this gun with the SFS system in its on-safe condition, all I have to do to fire it is push the safety down and pull the trigger. Exactly the same mechanism of action with the more traditional single action Browning high power, where when the weapon is ready to fire and the safety is on, I push the safety down and pull the trigger and the gun fires. So from the perspective of getting it into operation, it's exactly the same. The fact that that hammer is forward in the SFS gun doesn't in any way change the manual of operation to get the gun into operation. I still have to push a safety down, and then I can pull the trigger, and I'm going to get a shot with whatever firearm I am using. So what do I think about all this? I'm a gadget guy. I love things that, spring out, anything that's operated like this is really in my wheelhouse. I like switchblades for, automatic knives. I think those are really cool. I love the fact that a car that I had a couple of cars ago, you push the button and the key flips out. I like all this stuff. And, playing with this, it's really kind of cool. I mean, it's obviously very precise. I know that BH Spring Solutions has done a great job in making sure this is installed properly. But when I look at it from the perspective of a firearm that I would use for serious business, when I say serious business, I mean home defense, personal defense, defending myself, defending somebody else, law enforcement, military, etc. This is where, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, but this is where I view the SFS as sort of a solution looking for a problem. Now, and you can see that people make a lot of different statements about what the SFS might be good for. Probably the one that I had the most problem with is that people say, oh, if you are in a department that allows you to carry your own gun, but you aren't allowed to carry a gun that's single action, then you can get away with it by having a Browning high power. Oh, and by the way, you can also, the SFS system is also available for 1911 pattern guns. Go figure. But they say you can go ahead and you can get away with that because, nobody's ever going to see that you are carrying a gun that's locked and cocked because it doesn't look like that. It looks, I guess, like it's a double action gun. Don't do this. This is horrible advice. The reality is that it's still a single action gun. It still is one that when I take the safety off, the weapon is cocked. It has that single action trigger pull. And I'm sorry, but yeah, you might get away with it if you have a first line supervisor that doesn't know much about guns or doesn't care much about guns. But man, have you ever had to use it in defense of your life and defense of somebody else's? If anybody ever found out, and it really wouldn't be too hard for somebody to say, well, wait a minute, what's this that's going on? Not only would you be in violation of policy, but that could just really open up a whole can of worms. So for my money, the one big thing that people say, which is, getting past or getting around departmental rules is really a stupid idea. One of the other things that people said is, well, if you have a firearm that is single action, and again, the safety would be on carrying it like this, that this looks too aggressive, and so to some people might just look a little nicer. And I'm wondering, who are these people and where are they? As far as I know, if you're carrying concealed, then if somebody sees your gun and sees that the hammer is cocked back, you've failed at 50% of the definition of carrying concealed in the first place. Secondarily, if you're in a place where you're not worried about carrying concealed and you're carrying open carry, it really, I guess, strains the credibility of the argument to say, oh yeah, but I'm going to open carry and I have this full-size handgun on my hip where everybody can see it, but somehow they're okay with this, but this sends them into paroxysms. I just don't buy it. You might say, well, Jerry Nines, but what's the problem with the SFS? Maybe, people just want to be able to do that for one reason or another, and they really like the fact that, maybe this, or maybe this unnerves them. Well, if this unnerves you with the safety on, then, I don't know, maybe carry something else. I mean, if you don't understand the mechanics of your firearm, then you probably shouldn't be carrying it, or you should at least be carrying something that's a little bit, easier for you to comprehend. But again, what's the problem? Well, this is the problem that I see. One, I like to be able to utilize essentially the same pieces of my body that I use to take something off safe to put it back on safe. And with my pistol, oh, sorry, I've got the safety on, right? So with the pistol in the fire position, I'm going to ready that to fire by using my thumb and sweeping the safety off. But I can't sweep the safety back on. Mechanically, it's blocked. So that means that I have to now learn two very different neuromuscular techniques to be able to take my weapon off safe and on safe. And based upon my experience and my training and what I know about people and especially how they work under stress, I'm not sure that this is a great idea to have one place to take a weapon off safe and another place to put it on safe. Additionally, how are we going to get that gun on safe? How are we going to get that hammer forward? Well, let's talk about that. Number one, you might say, oh, well, just use your other hand. What's the big deal? Well, there is no big deal there. My other hand, I just did it. But we are talking about the use of firearms in sometimes life-saving or martial encounters. Well, let me ask you a question. What if your other hand is being used to hold somebody back? What if your other hand is being used to hold on to somebody and put them around you and shepherd them to safety? What if your other hand has a bullet hole through it? I could think of a myriad of reasons why you only have one hand. And so now if I only have one hand and I want to get this forward, I have to really sacrifice my firing grip. And I'm not trying to overplay this, right? But let's look at that. One hand, now I have to do this. And look at how much of the gun is now uncovered. Again, in a martial situation, I have to really make sure that weapons retention is one of the things that I focus on. It's hard to retain a weapon when I've given up about, I don't know, can I be kind and say 30% of my grip? It's probably more than that. Other people have said, well, just swipe it on your leg. and that sounds good. I actually tried it at the range the other day. But, now I have to worry about muzzle control. And by the way, it's not always necessarily possible to swipe on your leg. And also, I have to get the gun out of the fight, right? If I have a pistol that I can take the firearm off safe and then necessary on safe, maybe bring it back to my safe area, bring it back to my workspace, put the gun on safe, I can do that. If I have the SFS system, I need to either sacrifice that firing grip or rely on that one hand. Rely on that second hand. I think this is, a really neat solution for a problem that doesn't exist. I think that mechanically it is an amazing invention. It's really, really cool. And if you look at the insides and what's going on here, there are a whole bunch of extra parts in there. There's not a bunch of funky springs. It actually is really, really elegant. And my hat's off to the designer. I think it's great from a mechanical perspective. I don't think it's great from the perspective of somebody who's using a firearm for self-defense, duty use, etc. When I think about the martial use of a pistol, when I think about people in real-world situations where they are scared, hyperventilating, potentially wounded, focused on a threat and very little else, I like to keep things as simple as possible. And again, for me, the fact that I can't put the gun on safe in the same manner in which I take it off is a big non-starter. Everything else potentially, I guess you could overlook. Like if this were an option, then okay, that's fine. One of the other things that I guess I probably could have mentioned earlier that some people say is they go, well, the Browning high power doesn't have that same detent that the Colt 1911 has, and so people feel concerned about the Browning high power safety migrating downward. In practice, I've never seen that, and I don't know of anyone else that has ever encountered the safety migrating downward. Now, I will say that this safety, again, when it's in the on-safe position, don't forget, we have to do all the same things. There's no extra step to get it to fire. If the safety is down and the trigger is depressed, it will fire. Having said that, the SFS system has a definite ledge at the very bottom of the stroke of the safety where I have to overcome some resistance to get that hammer to come back. Any external action that's going to impact your firearm enough to get your safety into the fire position, maybe you slammed up against a counter, you got thrown to the ground, I don't know. Any of those that might happen with a traditional safety, it's going to happen with this one too. I did hear someone say, well, maybe that little click will warn you that something's happened. Oh, I guess my safety, it's kind of like the equivalent of you find out your fly is down, right? My safety is off. I think that's probably fairly hyperbolic and more in tune with somebody who's trying to sell the gun and the system versus someone who is really thinking about this system from a real world perspective. Browning SFS system, as designed by Leon Hubert and currently being offered by RDIH, is a really neat, really elegant mechanism that is sure to delight any of the gadget fans in your life. And if this is something you think is cool and you want to take it to the range and fire this, then you go ahead and do so. But I would say that if you're going to use a Browning high power pattern pistol or a 1911 style pistol, and you're going to use it for serious use in potential armed encounters or self-defense, then I would say leave the SFS system off of the gun. Take the $300 or something odd dollars that will cost you when all is said and done, and instead just buy some more ammo to practice. Hey, this is Jerry Nines. I hope I'm not hurting feelings. I'm just calling things as I see them. And because I am not by design somebody who tries to be harsh to others, let me end by saying this, a rare bit of humility. Again, everybody at BH Spring Solutions, everybody at RDIH, everybody at Cylinder and Slide knows way more about the Browning high power than I do. I would hope, though, in response, that those people recognize I know a little bit about the real-world implications of handguns when they're used in less than ideal circumstances. Hey, I welcome your comments. I welcome your feedback. I'd love for you to go down below and like and subscribe if you're enjoying the channel. Support maybe if necessary, or not necessary, well, maybe necessary for me. Support if you'd like to. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to me ramble on. This is Jerry Nines. Have a great day, and God bless America.